Hi there, my name's Sam of Core Coaching, and today I'd like to share with you a short warm-up which talks you through how you can best prepare your body before you take part in a strength and intensity workout. Each week on Instagram Live, I will share with you at 9:45 a build set and a main set for you to do at home in your own time. We'll do the build set together, and the aim is that you've already done this warm-up before we meet on Instagram Live. So this warm-up will be available for you at all times on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, Core Yoga with Sam. We need a bit of a space or a mat. I've got a mat today. You can wear trainers, you don't have to wear trainers. And we're going to start off lying down on the mat. So coming down to the floor, bringing your bum at one end, your head at the other end, your feet hip distance apart in front of your hips, your knees hip distance apart, your hands by your side. We'll start with pelvic tilts. So as you inhale, you want to lift your lower back off the floor, keep the hips and the shoulders nicely grounded, and make a big arch under your back. And as you exhale, you want to press that back flat into the floor. So you're inhaling to open up through the chest, and you're exhaling to push the back into the floor. Now, I like to work with my breath. I'm a yoga teacher. I think it really helps us tune in to the movement in the body. It helps us to move consciously, and it also helps us to notice the more subtleties of the activation of the muscles within the body. So as we inhale, we release, we lengthen the body, and as we exhale, everything inside is starting to tighten up anyway. We're inhaling one more pelvic tilt. You'll notice your pelvis tilts forward, and as you exhale, you press your back flat into the floor, and the muscles in the belly start to activate. From here, you're going to inhale and just release the lower back so that the back of the pelvis is flat on the floor. And so that's important. That will bring your pelvis into a more neutral space. Some people will have a subtle arch under their back, some people no arch, and some people a little bigger arch. Bring your hands by your hips. From here, press into the feet, squeeze the bum, lift the hips into a bridge, and then exhale, come back and down. Now you can add the hands as well. As you inhale to lift into the bridge, bring your hands behind you, and as you exhale, come back to the floor. You can press the heels, the toes, or the whole of the foot into the floor. But whatever you do, you want to see if you can access the butt muscles over and above the muscles in the back of the thighs. And for some people, they find it easier to do this by pressing the heels down. And for other people, for some reason, they find it easier to do this with lifting the heels up. Make one more bridge. We're lengthening the front side of the body, strengthening the back side of the body, or firing it up, and mobilizing the shoulders. And then lift your feet so your feet are hip distance apart, and the toes are drawing towards your shins, and your knees are stacked on top of your hips. And bring your hands on the small of your belly, your lower belly, sorry. Just underneath the belly button, that space wants to feel a little bit engaged. And then from here, you're going to exhale to extend the right leg away from you, tap the heel on the floor, and inhale, bring it back. Same thing on the other side. So as we do this, we want to make sure that there's no movement now to this pelvis. We're exhaling to extend, and we're inhaling to come back. And we're keeping that pelvis nice and stable. And then just doing one more on the other side, and then bring the feet back to the floor. Take the right ankle, pop it on the left thigh, and push the right knee away from you. Bring your hands to your hips, keep those hips nice and even. Often what will happen here is one hip will just slant across, particularly if the muscles are a little bit tight to begin with. Again, active lower belly. This time press the left foot into the floor, lift the hips and come into a bridge, and then exhale, come back and down. Nice. So as you push the foot into the floor, you're squeezing your left butt cheek to lift up the hips. And you're starting to recruit the individual muscles in the back of the hips. So when we walk, when we run, these muscles work in opposites. And very often, if we spend a lot of our day seated at a desk, in a sedentary job, maybe in a car, then these muscles stop being able to isolate themselves and activate on their own. So this is just reminding them, hey, we need to work independently here. And then bring bring the right foot to the floor, left ankle to the thigh, set yourself up first. So be really mindful that we're setting the right pelvic position, the pelvis is nicely in line. Still there's that same gap underneath your back, nothing too deep, nothing too shallow. And then pressing the right foot into the floor to lift the hips. So be mindful that it is the foot of the glutes that lift the hips rather than the arms pressing into the floor to lift up. And that way you'll start to recruit the muscles that we're going to work a little stronger when we get into the main set later on today. Lovely. And then from here, you're going to undo that one. Hug your knees both them into the chest. Just give yourself a little rock from side to side. And then from here, coming back to that stable position, bring your hands, your fingertips just behind your ears. And then exhale, raise your head and your shoulders. From here, pull the belly down into the floor. Just take a look at it. Make sure it's not popping up to the sky. And then as you exhale, extend your left leg and bring your right elbow to your left knee. And then same thing on the other side. I just did the opposite. Hopefully you didn't notice that, but you're working from side to side. You're keeping your shoulders up. If that's too much for your belly, then we bring the shoulders to the floor each time. Be really mindful that you don't encourage the tummy muscles to pop up to the sky. Hug the knees in towards your chest, rock yourself up to seated, and then come up to stand. Lovely. So we'll come to stand at the top of your mat or at the end of your space. Your feet are hip distance apart. And then from there, you're just going to rock forward onto your tiptoes, raise your heels, rock backwards onto your heels and raise your tiptoes. Starting to get into the inner thigh muscles, the feet and the ankles. You'll feel a little wobbly. When you go up onto your tiptoes, be mindful the heels don't draw out or the ankles don't draw out to the sides, so that we're nicely activating the muscles of the feet and the ankles. And then bring the feet back to the floor. Take a big breath in, draw your shoulders up to your ears, and exhale back and down. Just encouraging a bit of openness through the chest. Find that same pelvic position that you found when lying on the mat. So noticing if naturally you have a forward tilt of your pelvis, when we do this, we're less able to recruit the glutes and the lower belly muscles. So feel the back of the pelvis. Now that wants to be perpendicular to the floor. And then from here, we take a big breath in, draw the shoulders up to the ears, and exhale back and down. Inhale wide into your rib cage, keep the belly nice and active, and let's do a couple of Pilates style roll downs. So as we exhale, we're sucking the navel up towards the spine, the head and the shoulders are hanging heavy, and we just go down as far as our body will allow. We take a breath in at the bottom, and as we breathe out, we push the floor away from us, slowly rolling ourselves up, squeezing those inner thighs to contribute to the activation of the deeper muscles of the core. One more like this as you exhale, tuck the chin, and just allow the body to move as the body moves. And when the body gets to its final place, just allow it to stop there, don't push it beyond. Now as you exhale, push the floor away from you, vertebrae by vertebrae, you're bringing your spine back up and your pelvis back to neutral. Inhale here, now we'll build on this. Exhale, tuck the chin and slowly roll yourself down. At the bottom, you're going to bend the knees, inhale, walk your hands out and find a plank. You stay here for one exhalation breath, for one inhalation breath. And then exhale, lift the hips, walk the hands back to the feet. Inhale at the bottom here, and then exhale, roll yourself up. So you have the option always to do plank on your knees. As you exhale, tuck the chin, roll yourself down. Inhale, walk out and find your plank. This time we hold it here for 5 breaths. So you have the option of staying here on your feet or dropping to your knees. Take the option that feels right in your body, that allows you to maintain the breath. Push the floor away from you so you separate the shoulders. Don't let the shoulders hang, don't let the hips hang. This is not a good posture. We want to be much more strong here. And then lift the hips. As you exhale, walk the hands towards the feet. Take an inhalation breath. And then exhale, push the floor away from you and roll yourself up. Shoulders up to the ears and back and down. Walking your feet to the top of the mat, feet are hip distance apart. Bring your hands onto your hips. Find that neutral pelvis, that long spine. Extend your right leg behind you and you're coming into a reverse lunge on the right side. So making sure your feet stay hip distance apart, that your shoulders stay stacked on top of your hips, that you push the floor away from you with your left leg to come to standing. Take one more on this side and then release. From there, take your feet to a regular squat distance apart. So it's about shoulder distance apart, heels to the floor, toes slightly turned out. Imagine you're sitting in a chair behind you, sit back in the chair, and then push into the heels and squeeze both butt cheeks. So we inhale to go down, and we exhale to lift. Inhale to sink, exhale. Couple more like this, keeping the back as upright as the body will allow. Not allowing the knees to travel any further forward than the shoelaces or the midfoot. Then from here, walk to the back of your mat. This time we hinge the hips, so we keep a flat back as we inhale, and then we exhale, we walk out, we find our plank once again. This time in our plank, push back in your left heel, release your right foot, and exhale, draw your right knee to chest. And then inhale, send it back. Same thing on the other side, and back. So we're gonna do 3 like this on each side. We're working with control. Nice. We lift the hips. We walk the hands back to the feet. We inhale as we come up with a flat back. And we exhale, walk to the top of the mat. Hands to your hips, reset your pelvis. Left leg, reverse lunge. So as you jump into your left leg, making sure that the first couple you're starting to tune in to that alignment. So you're keeping the pelvis nice and stable, and you can feel that if you have your hands on your hips. And you're pushing the foot into the floor to lift yourself up. Your knee is staying tracked over your ankle, and the back knee is staying tracked underneath the hip. And then release. Come to the back of your mat. Inhale, hinge the hips. And exhale, walk your hands out and find your plank. Now this time, coming from side to side. So bring the feet together, option to drop the right knee. Bring the right hand to the center of the mat. Inhale, roll onto the outer edges of your feet and lift your left hand to the sky. Exhale, back to the center, and inhale, same thing on the other side. So you exhale to the center, you have an option to drop an underneath knee, and same thing on the other side. You got one more from side to side, and then come back to the center, lift the hips. Walk your hands back to the feet. All of this mobilization, inhale, come all the way up, is lengthening out and moving the muscles around the major junctions in your body, the hips and the shoulders, activating the muscles whilst giving them a sense of length at the same time. So feet come to one side of your mat and they come together. Set your pelvis. This time your pelvis is going to tilt forward because you're going to step right foot to the side, bend the right knee, and bring the hands to the floor. So it's just a simple lateral lunge. As you step out to the side, make sure that your left foot stays grounded. The right foot faces forward. And as you go back into your lunge, you send your hips back, so that allows you to tilt the pelvis over the top of the head of the femur bone, rather than crunching into the front of the hip. Good. Then from here, take your leg that wide, turn your heels in and your toes out. So goddess squat. Sit back and down, push the knees out wide, and squeeze and lift. So as you sit back, the knees push out to the sides. And notice how this feels in your outer hips. If this feels uncomfortable and compressive in the outer hips, then you take your feet a little narrower. So this exercise is loved by some and disliked by others. And quite often that's because structurally the body might be in a more compromised position. If this femur bone is tapping into that hip socket as you sit, you don't want that to happen. So any discomfort here, you narrow your legs. Discomfort here, totally fine. You're stretching the muscles. Come to the other end of the mat. Feet together, looking forward, fix your pelvis, left leg out to the side, tap the floor, back to the center. Lovely. So you can breathe through these. I like to inhale as I go into my lunge and exhale as I come out. That's because as I inhale to go in, my body expands, my body lengthens. And as I exhale to come out, I find that ability to create that activation right within the circumference of my core to help me come out of that space. The outer edge of the right foot stays grounded, and that's your last one. Turn so that the space is in front of you. Inhale, hinge the hips. Exhale, walk your hands out and find a plank. So now we're going to take funky plank. Funky plank a little bit more bizarre. Take your left knee towards your chest. Extend your left leg underneath you. Move your left hand to the center of the mat and lift up into a funky plank. Squeeze your inner thighs, push the floor away from you. Maybe gaze to the right finger. Take a couple of breaths here. And then exhale, send it back. So take time to reset. Come to plank, right knee in, right knee underneath you, right hand to the center of the mat. Ground the left foot, edge of the right foot. Lift your left hand to the sky. Squeeze your inner thighs, push the floor away from you. This isometric hold, firing up the muscles of the outer side of your hips, lengthening the opposite side. Come back to your plank, lift your hips, walk your hands back to your feet. Press into the feet, come all the way up to stand. From here, take your feet squat distance apart, so shoulder distance. This time they're facing forward rather than turning out a little. And then right leg behind left, you're coming into a crossover lunge. So I like to bring my hands to my hip points here because that just helps me notice when my hips start to rotate and when my hips start to dip. I want to keep my shoulders, my pelvis in one line. I'll go as deep as my body will allow. Again, this time if you feel too much compression in the inner side of the pelvis, go less far, go less deep. We're getting the stretch now in the outer side of the pelvis and the compression, that bone on bone stuff that we don't want to happen will happen on the inside. That's it, that's your last one. Then from there, bring your knees together, squeeze your knees together, narrow leg squat. Good, so just getting used to first of all the narrow legs, and then we're gonna add a twist. So we sink down into our squat, and we come up to twist. Down into the squat, and up to twist. Using the rotational muscles of your core as you make that twist, rather than using your arm to pull you around. Rotate and back. Obliques and back. Lovely. Last one to the other side, and then from there. Shoulder distance apart with those feet. Left leg behind right. Hands to the hip points because it just gives you a little guide. The hip points, they're the bony bits that stick out. Good. Keep that lower belly hugging back to the spine, just like it was right at the beginning when you were lying down on the mat with your knees elevated above your hips. Good. And then release. From here, one more variation in and out of that funky plank. So top of the mat, hinge the hips, walk the hands out, find a plank. Draw the right knee in, the right leg out, left hand to the sky. This time we spend less time readjusting our hands and keep the hands just ahead of the shoulders when we get back into that plank. Nice. One more on the left. Lift the hips, walk your hands back to your feet. Press into the feet, come to stand. So that has elevated the heart rate. It has lengthened and mobilized the muscles in the body. At the same time, it's activated the key stabilizing, the key strength muscles with particular emphasis around the hips. So when we work into exercises like squats, lunges, movement patterns like burpees, star jumps, squat jumps, the body is well set for us, for the practice, for the exercise routine. Thank you very much. It's been great to have you here.